You're listening to Joe List's Mindful Metal Jacket on the Riotcast Network, riotcast.com.
Hello, welcome to Mindful Metal Jacket. I tried to beef it up a little bit there at the end. Mindful Metal Jacket. It'd be weird if this is the first episode you listen to. Maybe it is. I hope it is. Maybe a lot of you are listening for the first time ever right now, and you heard that sinister introduction. Welcome to the Mindful Metal Jacket. That sounded a little bit like Andy Dick in The Cable Guy, medieval times. Cable Guy, great movie up until the last about 15 or 20 minutes. After they play Porno Password, everything kind of stinks. But everything before that is pure gold. Great film, I think. Hilarious. It's Joe List. You're listening to Mindful Metal Jacket. Thanks for listening. How about this week, huh, folks? Getting a little tense out there, is it not? It is. It's a crazy time. It's a scary time. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're being safe and out of harm's way, whatever you're doing. I hope that you're taking caution or taking it, if you're taking risks, to take at least calculated risks. And I hope that you're doing as well as can be. And it's a confusing, scary, crazy time. And hopefully better times will come from it. Hey? Hard to imagine right now. It's hard to imagine how we're going to get out of this mess we're in as a nation. And as a people in general, as an international nation, if that made any sense, a planet, world, society. But you can do a lot to help by first helping yourself. I think it's kind of like those when airplanes, when they say put your own mask on before securing your dumb baby who doesn't know how to put masks on. That's how I feel in this situation. Which sounds selfish, but I don't think it is. I think you got to take care of your own mental health first, so you're making decisions based on rational thought. That's what I would say. And I would also say it's okay to be confused, and it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to be anxious. Those are all normal feelings in a crazy time. I'm talking to myself as much as I am talking to you. Yeah, it's been a crazy time, but we're here with another episode. You guys have been listening. It seems to be growing. Tell some friends. That's the best thing you can do for this show. That would be a service to me and hopefully to you and your friends. The show, I think, is enjoyable and seems to be helpful from everything people are saying. People have been sending me nice emails. You can email me at joelistcomedy@gmail.com or Instagram or Twitter. I'm trying to check those things less because it becomes addictive and toxic. But I appreciate hearing from you guys, and leave a review on iTunes if you'd like, if you have the time. And some people donated money to the show. By the show, I mean me, at Venmo, which was really nice, at Joe List Comedy. No pressure to do that. I know times are hard, and some of that money is going to money that I'm donating to places, which has been nice. I wish I could do more of it, but my job ended. But that's enough about me. How are you guys doing? Are you guys working? Are you off? Or by off, I mean laid off, fired, furloughed, whatever. There is a new episode. You're listening to it. I talked with my friend Isabel Hagen last night. She's a wonderful comedian. She plugs her social media at the end, I think. She's more of an Instagram gal. We've been friends for a year, I guess. I met her at Skank Fest, and we had she was very funny, and we have very similar anxieties and OCD and assortment of other things. So we've become pretty good friends, and I thought, hey, Isabel's got anxiety. Maybe she'd like to talk about it, and she was willing and able, and it was a nice conversation. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you go and enjoy some of Isabel's comedy and music. She's a world-class musician, viola player. That's a hot instrument, right? Everyone loves a good viola. Just kidding. You probably don't know what a viola is if you're a regular person. But anyways, she's wonderful. We had a great talk, and hopefully it'll be helpful. And I just wanted to add, I hope you're exercising your empathy muscles, no matter how you feel. Maybe we could all, everybody, try to have a little more empathy for everybody. The police, the protesters, even the rioters, it's hard to watch people looting and assaulting people, but I don't know, maybe try to take a moment, even one moment, to maybe feel even the slightest amount of empathy for at least people looting. I don't know about the assault. I have a hard time with that, police or civilian assault. Maybe don't have empathy for them, actually. But I don't know. I'm just saying to try. Let's just try. All of us try to be a little more empathetic, sympathetic, kinder. It's hard to understand where other people are coming from sometimes, but let's at least try. Take a breath and be our best selves. Put our best foot forward, and any other cliche. Anyways, I love you. I'm talking too much probably. But I was staying with a friend, and I came back home, and my wife's not home, so I'm sitting here by myself talking to a microphone and a few thousand people that are listening. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you are feeling some sympathy and empathy for everybody involved in all of this. And by all of this, I mean the planet that we're existing on at the same time. We all inhabit this same small planet. JFK, nice guy, got shot in the face. Anyways, here is a little one of my favorite people is Jack Kornfield. He wrote a book called The Wise Heart that changed my life. I highly recommend it. Kornfield with a K. He's wonderful. And here's a quote from him. The point isn't to perfect your body or your personality. The point is really to perfect your compassion and your love. Hear that, folks? It's all about compassion. I should have said compassion earlier instead of empathy and sympathy. Or maybe they both work. Work on your compassion, I'll work on mine, and we can make it a better place, at least in our own personal worlds. Perfect your compassion and your love, folks. Don't worry about your body. I know I haven't been. Here's Isabel Hagen. Thank you for listening. Take care and be safe. This is it. I am here with Isabel Hagen. Is it Hagen, by the way? Because I've been saying Hagen, and some people say Hagin.
No, it's Hagin.
That's what I'm saying, right?
They're idiots.
Oh, geez, that's hurtful because some of these people are very nice, kind people.
No, it's I think actually it probably is Hagin, but over generations of, Midwestern peeps, it's evolved it to Hagin.
Okay.
So that's not that interesting.
No.
But we say Hagin, but it might technically be Hagen, is what I'm trying to say.
That was really nice because that was you protecting the people that have said your name wrong, which is sweet.
Yeah, because also there are references to Hagens. Like there's a Hagen character in a Wagner opera, and he pronounces it like that character. It's called Hagen,
right?
And that's in German. So
and then there's Hagen-Dazs.
Hagen-Dazs is the Hagen string quartet. They say Hagen.
Okay, and then there's Tom. The most famous Hagen to me is Tom Hagen of the Corleone family, Robert Duvall's character in The Godfather movie.
Oh yes, I've been told about this character. I have not seen The Godfather.
That's something you should see, but that's a podcast. I shouldn't say you should see. I hate people that are like, you gotta see this. You should see. You're crazy. I would just say that's a very good film that you would probably enjoy, but maybe you wouldn't enjoy it. I don't know. For the folks at home, you're sitting in front of a Star is Born poster. So,
yeah, but what I would say though about what you were saying before is, yeah, you want to entice, you want to make someone think they decided to see the movie. Like, oh, it's a good movie. Say no more. And then they're like, oh, maybe I should check it out. But if you're like, oh, you got to see it, it's so good. I'm like, fuck you, I'm not going to watch that.
Yeah,
How good could it be?
By the way, just to let you know, I'm going to record this on Zoom computer just to make sure I have a backup.
Okay.
So when you see the record thing going, I don't want you to think I'm secretly recording you.
The fuck are you doing?
Yeah, even though we
what are you
are
gonna use this for?
recording a show. Yeah, I just get annoyed. I try to, and this is along the lines of what we're here to talk about. I try my best to treat people the way I want to be treated. That's a general principle that we're all taught, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I get annoyed, and this is probably my own ego, or resentful when people are like, "You never saw, oh, you gotta, that's why I'm like this. That's a great movie you'd enjoy. I like to put that out there.
Right. Because you don't like the feeling when someone says that to you. See, I actually kind of like telling people I haven't seen certain classic films. Like I like getting the rise out of them. Like I'm like, ooh, they're gonna get upset about this. Like I haven't seen. I can't even think of a movie, but
The Godfather.
Yeah. I wanted to use a different movie to like change it, but I couldn't think of one.
What about The Graduate? Have you seen that?
I have seen The Graduate. Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to think of
other
classics that maybe you haven't seen. The Wizard of Oz.
Of course I've seen The Wizard of Oz, Joe.
Well, The Godfather's, you know what I mean? I mean, that's that's better than The Wizard of Oz.
Okay, well, maybe I should see it, but who knows?
Yeah, you don't have to see it. But anyways, we're here to talk about anxiety, mindfulness, and you're a guest that I think is great because you seem to be, not seem to be, we're pretty close friends. You're pretty riddled with anxiety. Is that safe to say?
Riddled, yeah, it's a great word for it. Just constantly, like I don't get depressed that much, but I'm always anxious. And
Right.
I always have like that feeling in my stomach, like constantly at the pit in my stomach that something is wrong or that I messed up when usually nothing is wrong, at least in my life. Obviously there's a lot wrong right now, but it hasn't like changed since the pandemic or anything. It's the same.
Your feeling hasn't changed, you mean?
Not really. I mean, sure, there are moments of heightened anxiety now because of it, but my baseline like was still pretty high before all of this. And
Yeah.
I think the same with you.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is well, I'm doing very well, surprisingly, in general in my life with my battle with anxiety. Like
Like you're really on top of it.
Yeah, it's weird because it lined up me sort of really figuring it out as best as I've been able to so far and really improving mentally has coincided with the most insane shit that I've experienced in the real world, which is weird. Like,
Right. And sorry.
No, go ahead.
You wonder if like, because I feel like you have been, just based on talking to you outside of this podcast, you have been doing a lot of work on your anxiety and ways to manage it. And you wonder like, is that just coincidence or are you doing more work because of like the pandemic and the world chaos right now? So it's like, it is actually a result, but it's like a good result from it because you're forced to do more work on yourself.
Well, a couple
to feel
things.
okay.
It's funny because now it feels like I'm your guest, which I appreciate because I like talking about myself. So
Yeah, I'm just,
you're just here to guide me as I talk about myself. We don't need to get to know you.
because I was going to follow that up with how I feel about that, but I want to know how you felt about it.
Great. No, it's perfect. You're the best host that I've ever had. No, well, it is interesting because I do feel like I've had time to put more work in. Like I've been actively working on my sobriety during this time, and I've been meditating daily. Nothing's getting in the way of my meditation, and sometimes twice daily. And I've had more time to read, so I'm going back and reading a lot of old Buddhist books that I used to read. And also, though, there's another level to it where I am not performing every night, so there's no like performance anxiety. I'm not meet and greets. I'm doing a lot less socializing, so there's less social anxiety. And I'm not traveling. I don't have an alarm clock. I don't have to wake up early. I don't have to take a cab to a flight and get off and on a plane. And there's a lot of stress, obviously, with all that. So I think my stress levels have gone down because of that.
Right. Because you're actually, even though if you think about what's going on, it's stressful, there's actually nothing stressful in your daily activities.
Yeah.
So
there's less.
Yeah,
there's less stressful activities happening, but there is the world shit of like, when are we going to be able to leave our house again? When am I going to be able to work again?
Right. Will I ever work again, we'll but we will. Sorry, I didn't mean to suggest that as the thing. But yeah, it's funny. Like I do feel like I'm living this very peaceful, spiritual life a lot of the time now. And it's much simpler. And there were times when I thought like, man, am I ever going to like stop when I was like in the thick of doing comedy and music and balancing all that and just nonstop. It's like, am I ever going to have like a time where I just don't do anything? Like I would think that. And I was like, probably not till I'm like old. Like, why would I stop? Maybe I'd take like a week here or there. And now I'm actually getting to live out this somewhat of a fantasy that I had. Yeah. I think a lot of people probably feel that way.
I feel the exact same way. And I was talking about it like incessantly on my podcast, Tuesdays with Stories, and this podcast of like, I'm run down. I need a break. I've just been on the road constantly and running around. And you're, like you said, you're a musician and comedian at the same time. So you're like working both careers pretty hard, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yes, sometimes. It comes in waves. It's not like I'm always working hard at both careers, and I am working. There's more active effort on the comedy side because I'm less advanced in that one, so I still have to do a lot more work to like get to the level where I want to be. Whereas with music, I've been at it for 23 years, so I can sort of coast a little bit more with music.
Now, for the folks who don't know, because I'm going to give you a nice intro before this conversation so the people will have some idea, but you are a world-class musician. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
I'll say it for you, but you're going to say it anyways. I was worried that you'd be feel weird saying it, but you went to Juilliard School of Music. That's correct, yes?
Yes.
That's a hard school to get into, if I'm not mistaken.
Not as hard as Berkeley, gotta tell you. But
that's a inside joke that nobody knows what's happening.
Yeah,
here,
I don't know why I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I've been busting Isabel's vagina flaps that she went to Berkeley, which is a different music school.
Right. That you always spell it wrong, which I find funny.
Yeah, which originally was accidental, but now I continue to do it because it's funny. But anywho, so you went to Juilliard, which is like, was that a stressful time? Was that crazy anxiety or stress, or was that whatever?
Yeah. So I started going to Juilliard. I went to their pre-college program that happened on Saturdays starting in 8th grade. And before then, my music stuff had always just been like a fun activity. And then when I got there were just all of a sudden like because I had been a big fish in a small pond at my community music school. And then I got to Juilliard and I like remember just crying when I got home that night. Like, I can't do it. Everyone's so good. Like, I'm nothing. And like my parents being like, look, what are you going to just cry? Like, keep going. And eventually like I found my way, but like at least it started out as something super stressful and just, all of a sudden you realize you're nothing compared to so many people. And then I think because I went there for so many years, maybe the stress kind of changed and got a little less towards the end when I was kind of checked out and didn't care anymore by like my 11th year there.
Wait, so you went to school there for 11 years?
Well, so for 5 years, it was just a Saturday program. Then I did 4 years of undergrad and then 2 years of master's.
Wow. And so was there like a lot of pressure from your parents, or did you put that pressure on yourself? Like you felt it subconsciously from them, or they were actually like, fuck you play that piano?
When I was younger, my dad would force me to practice, but he wasn't strict within the practicing. He just was strict about getting me to take the instrument out. And sorry, there's a helicopter. I don't know if it's going to be in the recording, but
well, I'm sharing a house with a friend and he has like a war movie. So we might have multiple helicopters going.
Oh, great. Okay.
We each have our own helicopter sound.
Yeah, I'm in the war and you guys have the war. Anyway, sorry, that was stupid.
No, it's funny. I mean, it's hurtful, but all right. So
anyway,
yes, speaking of,
my dad
you're in the war.
pushed me to
go back to Juilliard.
pushed me to practice. He was nice about it, but he was like, okay, we're going to practice every day. He would bribe me with, he would give me a Beanie Baby at the end of every week that I practiced every day. So there was like some pressure, but it was like friendly pressure. And I would say eventually it was all my own initiative because I just decided I wanted to be a professional musician and I knew how much work it took. My older brother is a serious classical musician as well. So I was kind of like always trying to live up to him. And I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a very active social life. So I thought this would like make me special if I was like good at viola.
It's so funny, the idea of like being really good at viola will plug me into the social circles.
Well, it did become social because I got all my good friends from Juilliard because we could at least like bond over music, and that was like comforting for me. So it actually was like an extremely social thing. And then I think I lost the allure of the social aspect of it was like lost on me, and then I just realized I didn't really want to be just a violist, and then that's when I started doing comedy. So maybe it was I really just became a musician to get friends.
Interesting. And you're a wonderful comedian as well. And now people that listen to the show have requested that I talk about social anxiety specifically. Now, you're someone that suffers from social anxiety, I would say. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah.
When did that start? Was that like kindergarten, or did that come later?
I think I probably started sensing it I always felt really awkward, and I would like say the wrong thing and people would be like, that's weird. Like adults, I would like weird out adults. And then in 3rd grade, I was friends with this girl. And then like halfway through the year, she like turned on me and she was like cool all of a sudden and I wasn't. And then that just sort of, I isolated myself. I had a very low self-image, I would say.
Yes, same.
And I just assumed anything I said was like wrong and that I was this inconvenience for everybody.
That's how I feel all the time still.
Yeah, I mean, I do too a lot of the time. I think I trained myself somewhat. And I mean, there was the period where I was drinking and I could just like, snap into I became a different person, and I can still snap into that if I like need to. I can be like phony with people and be like this social person, but it's not real and it feels very it's like takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. I mean, like with social anxiety, I mean, do you have this feeling? I imagine you do. Like, for me, it's almost like a weird high after the, because like, how like when you have like a ton of stress and anxiety and you feel it physically, like I blink and I flex all my muscles. And then when you get away from that situation, you start to be like, like you start, like it feels like a release of endorphins or whatever the science is.
Yeah.
And so it's weird. Like I feel that when after any time I'm at a party or a meet and greet or whatever, that moment of like finally getting back by yourself or with a friend or like a loved one, you just have that feeling of like, whew. And it does feel like, I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's just that feeling after a really stressful situation where you feel safe again.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you ever did this, like if you were at a party and then you just go to the bathroom for a second and like shut the door and you're just like, or I remember I went to summer camp when I was a kid, like a sports summer camp, and I was terrible at sports and like had no friends, and they had these bathroom stalls that like, how the bathroom stall usually has like a space where you can see the person's feet.
Sure.
They had these special ones where the door extended like all the way from the top to the bottom, so you were like completely private in these stalls. And I remember I loved going into one of those and just like being in there because I was just like, oh, like I'm alone, I don't have to worry about anything, and I could like recharge.
Yeah, that's the best. I mean, that's where I feel that way all the time, and I've had it happen recently where you're just like, this is just me. And for me, I feel like it's a control thing where you're like, in here, nobody can tell me what to do. I don't have to try to respond. I don't have to come up with the right thing to say. Nothing matters. Mm-hmm. It's just me. And I feel that way even here. Like like the last week, I'm sharing a house with like one of my closest friends in the world. But like at the end of the day, when you get back into your room, you're still like, okay. Like there's no, for some reason, the anxiety of like, of listening and coming up with the right thing to say in response to somebody. Because we've all had those moments where somebody finishes saying something and you're like, definitely. And they're like, what?
And then they're like, I was saying I was going to kill myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, oh, shit.
You're like, sorry. Because we're in our own heads all the time.
Yeah, like I'm here in my apartment with my roommate who I couldn't enjoy being with more. Like we get along so well. We just balance each other out. And I still like at the end of the night after we watch a movie, sometimes I'm like, all right, I need to like go to my room and like just be alone. And I'll just be like, okay, I'm going to bed, but I probably won't go to bed. I'll like stay up and like do whatever, but you just need that space.
Yeah, it's so weird. And I don't know where mine started, but I remember distinctly when I was going to kindergarten. For some reason, I didn't go to preschool. I don't know why. My parents didn't. My sister did, and I didn't. I don't know if they saved money or whatever it was, but I was used to being at home, socializing with my family, and my first day of kindergarten, I walked in, I just was like bawling. I didn't want to leave my mother. I was like, I can't go in there. And I remember like having like essentially like a panic attack, but I was like crying and it was like a scene. And Dave Chappelle talked about this in an interview, but I had the same feeling as him where like it felt like in kindergarten everybody had met each other. Did you have that feeling? It felt like everyone knew each other and I was just coming in. They were like, who's this fucking idiot?
Yeah, maybe I felt that in kindergarten. I don't think I felt that like, yeah, because it's like when you're new at the school, so that makes sense. Yeah, you're like, how did you like, and so I think I actually went to a school where some kids had met each other because they had like a preschool program that they did beforehand. Is that what you're saying, that they all went to preschool together?
I guess maybe. I mean, maybe they did go to preschool and that's why I didn't go to
Right, but
preschool
it's
and I
just-
thought that's why I had that feeling maybe.
Right. But maybe it was just maybe they didn't know each other and they were just more able to like click in right away. I think some people really do just thrive off of other people's energies more.
Well, that's what's so interesting to me, I guess I still have that same feeling now where there's people that can, obviously we have friends like this that can just walk into a room and they're just friends with people. They just start talking to people. And I'm like, that's psychotic to me.
Yeah. Are they being genuine though? I wonder. Maybe some of them really are. And that's just how I don't know. You don't want to like accuse someone of, you can't like ask them like, so when you do that, when you're like being cool and stuff, like, is that really you? Or like, are you also hurting inside?
I mean, I'm sure they're hurting to some degree, but some people are just more social. There's definitely people that are social who are also depressed or sad or angry or their parents hit them or whatever the hell. But
right.
it's a different issue because I feel like I'm a pretty happy guy, a relatively happy guy. I just get anxious in social situations where I think there's people that are very social who are incredibly unhappy. They're called alcoholics.
But do you get this sometimes where you're talking to someone who even really well and you feel like the lull in the conversation and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, like, am I like a really boring, uninteresting person? Like, what's going on here? Because your energies aren't gelling, and then you start like evaluating your whole relationship with them. And if it's been like a lie, or if you should never see them again. Do you do that, or am I just crazy?
I had that 5 minutes ago in this podcast when you looked away for a second. I was like, she's bored. She hates the show.
I was looking at my recorder because I got paranoid that it wasn't recording or something. That's all.
Yeah, me too.
I
I'm
was
going to do
fully
that right
engaged.
now. I'm going to do that right now. Okay, yeah.
And then sometimes you'll be talking and I'll be like, okay, make sure you're listening so that you can say something. But then you've said like 5 things while I've been like, make sure you're listening.
Oh, shit.
That didn't really happen right now, but that's happened to me a lot.
I feel the same way. And like, I feel exactly the same way. And I had that like even earlier today where you're listening. And then exactly, I'm just going to repeat what you just said. You start thinking about listening to the person. And then all of a sudden you're like, am I listening right now? Am I a good listener? And then before you know it, you're like, oh, fuck, I just missed a whole lot of shit this person was saying.
I guess so many things come down to this, but it comes down to just being fully present. Because if you're fully present, I guess you'd think that you wouldn't miss anything. You wouldn't be thinking about anything other than what the person is actually saying to you.
Yeah, but that's what's such a struggle. But that is, I think, the answer to all of the problems that we're dealing with now in society. Is that like this lack of presence and sort of living in the past and living in the future and not listening, and people making their minds up about things before any kind of discussion and not being open to hearing things and being outside of the present moment.
Right. Reacting quickly without, and also all the, narcissism and hunger for power and money. I mean, all of that's, essentially destroying this country comes from feeling unsatisfied probably with yourself, and feeling unsatisfied. Ultimately, it comes down to not being present. And maybe it's that simple.
Exactly.
Sometimes I think about like evil dictators and I'm like, man, can we just like teach them how to feel happy in the moment? Maybe they'd stop like fucking shit up so much.
Completely. I mean, I really do think it's simplified, obviously, but that's the thing. It's simple but not easy. Like yoga, like
Right.
meditation. A lot of things are simple but not easy, and I think like you could break it down to that. And it's not like blaming those people. They're in a system that doesn't allow them to be present. All of us are, because we're not taught that. There's like an old thing that I've thought of, and I wasn't the first one to point it out, but like going back to preschool is preparing you for kindergarten, and kindergarten is preparing you for elementary school, which prepares you for middle, yada, yada. And then college prepares you for real life. So we are in this mindset of preparing for something. And I think that's part of my anxiety and stress. A lot of my life is the feeling of life hasn't begun yet. When I'm here, that's when life will begin. When I'm making this amount of money, or when I have health insurance, or when I'm married, whatever it is, that's when life has begun. But really, life has been happening all along. And life is happening right now in this moment. We're having this conversation. But even this, part of me is thinking of people's response to this podcast and sending the sound files. And is this recording? And if this wasn't recording, I got to send it to my producer. So it's difficult to be present all of the time, but it's a constant effort to be present, if that made sense.
Right. And it's so elusive because the minute you start thinking about being present, you're not present.
Yeah, that's where it gets really deep.
But I like that about, everything is preparation for something else. And at the same time, also, your whole life you should want to learn, just like in school. It's like both things you should be living your life when you're in school, and when you're not in school, you should still be trying to learn things while also being present.
Yeah.
And like maybe if they weren't such separate sections, maybe if there was more like immersive learning. And I think there are probably experimental schools of teaching like that, but
I would hope. I mean, that's what we should be teaching. By the way, also, the whole time we're working, we're planning for retirement. You got to get ready for retirement.
Right.
And then in retirement, you're like, you got to get your affairs in order. Like you have to have your will.
Right.
It's really, I mean, I think we would be better served. And it's interesting because I've been like so anti-religion my whole life. But then I'm like one of those guys who's I'm like, yeah, but Buddhism is the best religion and that's what everyone should study. But I do think we would be better off like if in public schools, they started meditating when you were young. They taught you to sit and just be with your breath and be with yourself and be present and work on being present.
Yeah, I went to a really progressive K through 12 school, and I remember doing some meditation as a child. And I actually have this memory where like they had us close our eyes and the teacher said like, now I want you to focus deep down. And like, I'd never heard someone say that before. And I remember like imagining my eyes going like down into my stomach.
Oh, wow.
And it actually feeling like very relaxing. And I just immediately had like that imagery. And I think that like opened up, like I have always kind of been receptive to meditation and that kind of thing. I haven't always practiced it. You have to practice it. But I think like I was lucky I went to like this, rich kid school where they did that, but
oh, you privileged asshole.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
But
I mean, I don't think you're an asshole.
No, I'm privileged, but definitely privileged. Maybe an asshole. Definitely an asshole too. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But despite being privileged, your fears and anxieties are real, and you are dealing with your own problems. I think this is a side issue, but I think a lot of this push on understanding privilege and recognizing privilege, which is good, I think, but sometimes there's a lot of negative comes out of it because then people think they shouldn't have any feelings of stress or anxiety or pain because you can come from a place of privilege, meaning monetary privilege and racial privilege, and still have a very difficult time in life.
Right. You don't want to deny. It's never healthy to deny like bad feelings you're having, even if they're not as bad as someone else's situation.
Exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
I actually started reading that book, and you recommended not the book, but the author, Tara Brach. Is that how you say her name?
Yes, Tara Brach. Yeah, I love her.
And just in the beginning of the book, she talks about sort of, I don't know if I'm going to paraphrase this correctly, but the idea of sort of not fighting whatever feeling you're having, just recognizing it, but but doing that actually will spark the change. It's not like you're just accepting your feelings so that you can be lazy. It's like accepting the problems will actually give you the space and freedom to then evolve and change. So it's like, it's super important, especially in moments now where we are trying to fight against privilege imbalances and racial issues, that people who are privileged don't feel like denied of their own issues. You accept, okay, I have issues, but there are also these issues that need to be solved externally right now. It doesn't mean I don't get to feel my own pain, because if we squash that pain, you're not even going to be able to be a good ally, you know?
Right.
I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, it did. That's it's an excellent point. I had the thing where I'm like you said, multiple things, and so I had thoughts on multiple things, and then I had too many thoughts at once, and now they've all escaped me. But acceptance, that's what it was. Accepting the feelings, and that took me a long time to understand too, because I would read it in all these books, and my therapist would always say that it's about accepting, and I for a long time took accepting as don't do anything about it, you just accept it. But just because you accept something doesn't mean you don't do anything about it. You can accept something and take action to change that thing. Those aren't two separate things.
Right. There might be certain things you cannot change that you accept, but there's a lot of things that acceptance is just the first step. And then you go from there.
Acceptance is the first step.
Sounds like another podcast title or a book or something.
But it is. I mean, acceptance is the key to everything. I mean, that's like with my sobriety and my therapy and my Buddhism, all of three things combined, what it all keeps coming back to is acceptance. And that's one of the things that I've found myself feeling mentally healthy, at least to some degree, during all of this stuff. First COVID, which is now over, fortunately, it ended. COVID, and now whatever this is, protests, riots, looting, civil unrest. I mean, there's so many things happening at once, I guess, that it's hard to put a label on it. But what it stresses me out and makes me anxious and feel uneasy. But what helps is that lack of control, accepting that I don't have any control. I cannot actually do anything about this. Not to say I can't donate money to worthy causes, and I'm politically active. I vote, and I have conversations with multiple friends and try to do this podcast, which hopefully helps people with their mental health. So there's things I can do, but I cannot prevent looting and racism and whatever, or spread of disease. I can't really do any of that.
Right. You have to do the actions and give up any chance of the result being what you want it to be, that's a Buddhist thing, right? Giving up I think that's in the Bhagavad Gita, giving up the fruits of your actions.
Bhagavad Gita. That sounds like a dance. What is that?
I don't know. You look it up.
All right.
Isn't it some Buddhist thing? I might be really mixing it up. Anyway, the idea is like, yeah, you donate money. Maybe you go protest. You make a post. You do whatever, but then you don't say like, well, I did all those things. Why aren't things getting better? You know, you do those things and then you give the rest up because you can't control the result of any of those things.
Right. Same with relationships or anything else. There's so many ways to put it, keeping your side of the street clean and doing what I can do. I can only control what I can control and all those things. And that's how I keep feeling, because in times like this, again, with COVID and civil unrest, and there's a lot of feeling and pressure of what should I be doing, what can I do, and I keep coming back to like, all I can do is live my best life, and I can feel good about who I am and be kind to everybody.
Yeah, and we underestimate how much that impacts other people, just living that way and then talking to your friends. And I feel like in the last, months that I've been working on my spirituality more and with sobriety and everything, I'll just like listen to a friend with their problem, and the friend will be like, thanks for just like listening, and it's like, oh yeah, I didn't even notice that was what I was doing, just being a better listener or something. And then that rubs off on them and they realize like, oh, I could just like be a better listener too, and like live a certain way. I don't know.
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I feel like you're getting anxious, as it were, that like you sound like stupid or something, or maybe I'm projecting that because I think you sound stupid.
Yeah, right. You're like, she must really hate herself because she sounds fucking dumb.
No, but I mean, at the end of it, you're like, but I don't know, maybe. But I'm like, I think it's a really good point, and they talk about that again in a lot of these Buddhist books, and Tara Brach talks about that, is that it makes a difference because hearing people talk that way makes them be like, oh yeah, like for me, I listen to Eckhart Tolle or Jack Kornfield or Ram Dass or any man, no women, but
right.
no, or Tara Brach as well, or like Ted Alexandra, who I bring up a lot on this podcast. Some people just talk in a way that like you leave being like, I feel good, like I'm going to be really calm, and I walk a little slower, and I feel loose after talking to these people.
I'm going to be okay. Yeah, and all Ted had to do was just speak.
Yeah, it's just who he is. It's just being around him, seeing him. I mean, even like seeing like a photo of Ted because of the way he's lived his life. I'm just like, oh yeah, right. I can just cool down. And I don't even always agree with some of the stuff he says, but I know he's saying it with conviction, and he's put thought into it, and then he says it very slowly and usually hilariously.
I like to think that you just have photos of him on your phone that you pull up in times of need.
My little Ted photos.
Yeah, like you have an album. It's a mindfulness album, and it's just pictures of Ted.
Well, there are like certain people, like I said, like I'll go to an Eckhart Tolle YouTube, and just as soon as it starts playing, I'm like, I already feel better, and I already find the answer in there. Colin Quinn is another person who's like, I'm just name dropping now, but is like a close friend of mine, but like his wisdom, I just talked to him for 3 minutes, and I'm like, everything feels a lot better.
Yeah, I guess I feel that way about my dad a lot of the time.
Oh shit, I was hoping you were going to say me.
Oh.
Yeah, but let's talk about your dad. Let's talk about your dad.
I mean, my dad was going to come up inevitably, but you're like, was he? I don't know.
No, he was.
I said that as if that's a joke with us, like my dad. But
no, I mean, you talked about your dad for a moment earlier. I know your dad.
Yeah.
I don't know your dad.
My dad.
I don't actually know your dad.
He's a very thoughtful guy, and he always speaks very slowly and listens carefully. And any question you ask him, he'll go, well, and then he'll think about it, and then he'll answer it. And it's just very calming to me to be around him.
Yeah, that's nice. I mean, like someone that takes time to answer it's a nice feeling, instead of just like you finish talking and they start saying something like I'm doing with you.
Yeah, and I was cutting you off, and what are you gonna do?
I should have done an episode with your dad, it sounds like.
He'd be a great guest. I'll probably have him on my thing once. What's
your podcast? Do you want to plug it, since you've subtly pushed it into the middle of mine?
No, it's not out yet. It's a new thing. Don't worry about it.
All right, I wasn't worried about it. I just thought you might want to.
I know. I hate when people tell me don't worry about it, and then I just said it to you. Do you hate that?
I do hate that. What I hate more, this is like the thing I hate. I was going to say the most, but not even close, probably. But I hate a lot of things. I'm an angry, cynical person. But
earlier you said you were a pretty happy guy, so I don't know what to believe anymore, Joe.
I think both of those things can exist. I think you can be angry and cynical and happy, but maybe not. Are happy and angry opposites?
No.
I think happy and sad maybe are opposites.
Yeah, I think they're happy and angry are like they're not opposites. They're like I'm making a thing with my hands that no one can see. So you know what I'm talking about, people. Like it's like just a different direction.
Right.
It's like to the side.
They're different, but they're not opposites. But
they can coexist.
What I hate, and so can all of us, folks, what I hate is when people don't hear you. Instead of saying, what was that? They say, what's wrong? That makes me crazy. I'll be like, oh, I got to go to the bank. What's wrong? And I say, nothing's wrong. I have to go to the bank. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, I feel like that's just like something only a real dick would say. That like gave me a pit in my stomach when you just said that.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
So
when I said don't worry about it though, what I meant in that sense was just like, oh, like I don't need to plug it. Like I feel I need to like actually release the thing before, like, please don't worry. But what I hate is when I'm like, what happened? And they're like, don't worry about it. And I'm like, well, I wasn't worrying about it. I was just curious, you know?
yeah, it makes you feel like a child. It makes you feel stupid. It makes you feel little. Don't worry. This is for the adult. This is for us.
Right, right.
So let me ask, what do you do for your anxiety? I think people like to hear these things. Are you a meditator? You're reading some Tara Brach. What else goes on? Is it exercise or all of the above?
I exercise. That helps a lot. I was feeling really paralyzed today on the couch by anxiety, and then finally got myself up and did a little workout and felt much better. So that's something. I wish I meditated more. I feel like I read more about meditation than actually meditate, but I will say reading about it does calm me down.
Sure.
Because they'll give examples and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I feel that. Like, that makes sense. And I feel that in my body. And so reading, I like reading self-help books. I read this book recently called All About Love by Bell Hooks. That was really nice. It was a book less about like anxiety and more about just the lack of love in our world, but that was a nice one.
Maybe I'll check that out.
Reading and exercising, talking to someone who calms me down, honestly, or talking to anyone, just calling somebody. But I admittedly don't have a good practice right now with like meditation. And I feel like you have a really solid meditation practice right now.
Yeah, I've been good with it.
Something that helps is, and I think it's been happening more in this quarantine, is that I am able to take note of my patterns more of when I get anxious. And I think we were talking about this a little. Like you said, you feel shitty between like 4 and 5 p.m. or something. And yeah, being like, oh, I'm not just like, because when your life is a mess and you're running from place to place, if you feel shitty, you think something's wrong. But if nothing is changing in your life, if you're just sitting at home and then you feel shitty sometimes and not other times, you're like, oh, that's just a pattern that's going to go up and down. And even just noticing the pattern and observing it and being aware of it, that immediately takes the edge off. Like, oh, this is just my anxious time. And oh, one other thing. I feel like I'm really going off, but
no.
I struggled a lot with performance anxiety with viola to the point where I couldn't perform without like my bow shaking, and did all this like hypnotherapy for that. And sometimes, it helped a little, but something I learned from this hypnotist guy was people with OCD, the way you treat it is like every time you want to like go check if the stove is off or do your little whatever you're going to do for your OCD, stopping and saying, it's not me, it's my OCD, and then not doing it. And I remember thinking that and being like, okay, what if I said, it's not me, it's my anxiety? And it just like separates you from the anxiety. And for me, that's like a quick little relief when I'm really having like a close to a panic attack. I can say like, it's not me, it's my anxiety.
Yeah.
It takes the edge off.
I love that. And that's something, I mean, that's mindfulness defined, really. I mean, that's exactly what mindfulness is that thing of like, being mindful of like, this is my anxiety. This is the thing. The only thing I would contend maybe or whatever is that to separate yourself, to me, I'm like, this is a part of me. To let your anxiety be a part of you, like, oh, this is that part of me where I have anxiety. It lives in, like Thich Nhat Hanh always talks about embracing it and being kind to it, and even visualizing your anxiety as like a child that you pick up. Like your anxiety is like a child who's scared or nervous or crying, and what do you do with them? You pick them up and hold them close, and usually they'll stop crying. And to sort of visualize anxiety or stress or anger that way, to even like to visualize it as a small child that you're literally like picking up and holding close to you, like, oh, this is my anxiety. Let me breathe through it, spend a moment with it. It really does help to kind of quiet it down, because for most of my life, I didn't know that. And I would be like, oh, I'm losing my mind. Here comes that thing. And my therapist says it all the time. It's just anxiety. And it's like, the way he says it, it's been so helpful to me. It's just anxiety. That's it. There's no. It's anxiety. Anxiety is scary, but that's all it is anxiety.
Yeah, I guess the way I said it, that like separates it. If you say it's just anxiety, that like gives it less power. And then treating it like your child, that's like, okay, it's a part of me because it's my child, but it's like, it is still separate, but let me like care for it. That reminded me of, you have that joke about like your thoughts don't serve them tea.
Yeah.
Like what's the saying?
The saying is, let thoughts come into your head, but don't serve them tea.
When you were saying like cuddling a child, it's like, well, maybe like you should let the thoughts come into your head and like serve them tea. Like, I don't know, like care for them.
Right. It just, yeah, I guess whatever analogy you get to. I mean, so the tea thoughts thing is more about meditation specifically of like, don't get carried away with the thought. Don't follow that thought. Just be like, oh, we are, like a thought comes in of like, I got to mow the lawn.
Right. Like even if it's an okay thought, it's just.
Yeah. Just think, okay, I'm thinking about mowing the lawn. Come back to your breath. Let that thought go, as opposed to sitting there and going, I got to mow the lawn. If I don't mow the lawn by 3 and then I get my allergies, I better take a Claritin before I mow the lawn. And, oh, remember that old lawnmower at my parents'? You don't want to go down that road.
Right. Okay. So that's more of a technique to just quiet the mind in general, not to get rid of the like anxious thoughts necessarily, but just to get rid of like all the thoughts.
Yeah. And then accepting the anxiety of like, you can still do things with anxiety. Like, cause I always, when I would have anxiety attacks or just high anxiety, I'm like, fuck, here comes this anxiety. And I have all these things I had to do. I got to go do a show, or I'm going on a date, or I'm watching a movie, and now I have anxiety. Just, yeah, okay, I have anxiety, and I can still do those things with the anxiety. And that acceptance allows it to kind of, it takes the teeth out of it for sure. And same with like what you're talking about playing viola. Have you ever done a show where you just couldn't perform and you had to run off and you ruined the show?
I've never run off, but I've like messed up so badly that it's just, I knew that I wasn't gonna, that if it was a competition, I wasn't gonna win, or if it was an audition, I wouldn't get in or something.
Isn't it strange to compete with art? I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it was like with college auditions, because they can't let everyone in. You had to audition for that. But then at school, we'd have like the concerto competition. Like all the violists would learn the same piece, and whoever played it best got to play it with the orchestra, like as a solo.
Right.
But yeah, it's weird. I was talking about this with someone, because at least with classical music, it's like, it's part art and part like you're an athlete.
Sorry.
Part art, part fart. Yes. It is part fart, honestly. Stupid. But you are kind of, it's like figure skating in a way, because there's so much technique and athleticism with figure skating. But also they're dancers, and you see some figure skaters and it's like there's just something about them. There's like this artistry with them, whereas others, it's much more just the technique.
Right.
I think it's the same with classical music, where you're not like jazz, you're improvising. It's much more like, how could you compare? You do, but how you could argue that that's really like subjective. Whereas with classical music, you're learning a piece and learning it note for note. So you could at least be like, well, she played all the notes right.
Yeah, it's just such a bummer, I guess, that it comes to that place. All that, like comedy or music or whatever it is, comes to a place where somehow it becomes competitive, because you have to audition and earn your way onto things. And you wish it wasn't, because it's supposed to be fun and creative, but that's the way it goes. Now, do you have performance anxiety with comedy? Like you did the Tonight Show. You're the last comic to perform on the Tonight Show. That's right? Like that was like days before this all ended.
March 11th was the day I did it. And then March 12th, I think people were starting. March 12th, they did the show without an audience. And then I think the next day they just shut down the show completely.
Yeah, March 11th was the last day of normal life. Like, and you did the Tonight Show. That's why you were on with Bernie.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like the most surreal day, because I met Bernie. I was making my TV. I was living out a dream of mine. It was, it was like always a dream to make it onto a late night television show, and the world was about to shut down. It was just the weirdest day. But I definitely struggle with performance anxiety with comedy. I talk about this a lot with people though. Like, I get the same nerves, but because there's less physical nuance with comedy that there is with playing the viola,
Right.
I know the nerves aren't going to fuck me up. It's just energy. Like, it doesn't matter if my hand's a little shaky while I tell a joke, at least not for me and my style of comedy. Whereas if my hand is a little shaky when I'm playing viola, it completely screws up the performance. So I get nervous about the anxiety. Like, when I have adrenaline before comedy, I'm just like, it's not going to fuck me up. So I don't serve it tea or whatever.
Right.
If I'm a little nervous before viola, I'm like, well, this isn't going to be good. And then it spirals and builds on itself.
But you said it though, this anxiety about anxiety. Like that's what I would have when I did late nights. I've done it like, I've done 5 late nights. So whatever. But you get anxiety. Anxiety about the idea of anxiety. Like, oh, I'm nervous that I will be nervous. And then I have a thing where I'm like, if I'm not nervous, I'm nervous that I'm not nervous. So it's this weird thing where even if I don't have anxiety, my life is ruled by anxiety.
Right. And I will say especially with viola, I haven't figured out the nerves yet. Like, I still will take beta blockers for high stress performances with viola because I can't control the shaking.
Right.
And I even considered taking one before the Tonight Show, but like didn't have one and like knew it would kind of be fine. But I was like, maybe I'll be so nervous for that I will screw it up.
Yeah, well, my fear with late night was that, like, what if it's a live show? I'm like, what if I'm so anxious I can't go out there? I just pictured Letterman be like, what do you mean he can't come out here? Like, what are we going to do? We can't end the show. And like, the word spreads that I'm an unreliable fucking loser. And then I have to kill myself.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't usually get super anxious before comedy performances. I will say before the Tonight Show, I had this fear that I would forget my jokes. Like, I would just forget how to say them because in the rehearsal, I was also really sick. And I completely lost my voice the day before.
That's right.
And it was like the scariest, worst day the day before. And so I didn't go out that night and do a set. And I was like, I haven't done comedy in a night. Like, and in the rehearsal, I actually did forget a joke. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to forget all my jokes. So I was like nervous that would happen.
I think we hung out like 2 days before that because
we did.
I just went to Manhattan because I was sick at the same time, which I'm hoping that we both had COVID. That's what I'm hoping.
I hope it. I also hope it wasn't because I also did like show up places, but I kept my distance and washed my hands.
Yeah, Bernie didn't die.
It's actually really funny. I had probably shouldn't be saying this, but I had a picture of me and Bernie that I was waiting 2 weeks after to post to make sure he didn't get COVID.
That's fucking
so that
hilarious.
They wouldn't like trace it back to me.
They're like, there she is. This bitch killed Bernie.
Well, because some people at the show knew I had been kind of sick, so they'd be like, well, Isabel was sick, and like, look at them. They're together.
Yeah, I remember. It's funny because Sarah and her sister and I just went to the Village for the first time. I went to Manhattan for the first time since. You made a face. Was that a bad text?
No. I was looking at my recorder again.
Oh God, is it recording?
Yeah.
Oh, I saw a bad face. I got nervous. But so we all went to the city for the first time since March, and we parked right across from where that hotel where we went in, so I could shit. If you remember, you knew a good shit spot.
The Marlton.
Yeah, and that's where we parked. And I was like, oh my God, this is so weird. Just like randomly, I ended up in the same place that I was the last time I was out in the city, shitting at this packed hotel bar.
Right.
I don't know what made me think of that. I guess, because we were sick. It was like 2 days before the Tonight Show.
Yeah, we were both kind of like, I have like a tickle in my throat. And then that night, I talked to a guy on the phone for like an hour. And then went to sleep, and then I woke up and had no voice. Right.
Yes, I remember that. I had a cough every morning and night. The first 4 days of COVID, I had like a bad cough. So maybe I had it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I feel like you were a few days behind me. Maybe I gave it to you.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I never keep track of who got people. I hate when people do that. I got sick from you, and you're like, well, everyone's fucking sick. It just spreads around.
Yeah, and especially before people were wearing masks or taking any precautions. I mean, there are just particles in the air all the time. You never know who you got it from or who gave it to who. And I'm sure. I don't know. I'm not worried about it. But anyways, that's what like
that's how I met you, and what sort of drew me to you was you went on before me at Skankfest,
Oh yeah.
and you were very funny, but also you seemed like you had the same anxiety as me, like
You seem
the
like a mess.
yeah, like the blinks, and like I was like, oh, like you reminded me of me. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's like female me when I was a new like, because how long have you been doing comedy?
About like 5.5 years.
Yeah, that's like how I felt, and I like related. I was like, oh, that feels like that's like lady me.
Right.
But anyway, like, because you get
Yeah.
like a blinky thing sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, I have a blinky tick I've had since I was like 8.
Yeah,
It
me
acts up
too.
when I'm like anxious or tired, or you have a blinky thing? I guess you have glasses on, so it's harder to tell.
Yeah, I've been doing it this whole podcast. If you watch my live at Gotham, my first television appearance, I'm doing it like hardcore. And luckily, it was kind of before social media. But all my friends from like high school were like, Why are you doing that?" And
Oh yeah.
it was one of those things I knew I was doing for a long time. And then my now ex girlfriend, but like my girlfriend at the time, I was like 20, was like, "Hey, can you fucking stop doing that?" Like, she was like, it was like towards the end of the relationship, and she was
Oh,
like, "Can you
yeah.
stop doing that?" And it was the first person that ever called me out, and it made me worse with it. I've gotten much better about it, but
Yeah, mine has eased up a little bit over time as well, but I also used to do the thing where like I essentially would have to roll my eyes as a tick. Like I just did it for you. Like I don't know if you can see that, but that was
I
a
can. People
tick
at
for
home
me.
can't.
So people would think I was rolling my eyes at them because I just like had to do that motion where I
Weird.
would like roll them up.
I have a thing that I do in the car, and this is all OCD shit, where somehow I would think about crashing or destroy the car, which I still have when I drive, of like, what if I got hit by a car or drove off and died in a car wreck? And I would have to do like knock on wood. Like, people were like, don't knock on wood. And somehow I started by knocking on my head, like that old joke, knock on wood. People would knock on their head, like their head is wooden. And then I thought of the joke, wood, like an erection meant wood. That's what you would say years ago. So I would knock on my crotch, and then I would knock on just the dashboard, because that feels like what you would knock on. So for 15 years of driving, anytime I had a bad thought or someone would say something, I would do all three. I would have this tick where I hit my head, and then my groin area, and then the dashboard. And
Yeah.
no one ever really noticed it, but it's something I've done 5,000 times.
Yeah, I had a period. It's so
I
we
bet
really
you
do have
did.
a lot of. Having mine soon. Can you tell? That wasn't funny. I'm sorry. You can edit
No,
that
it's
out.
terrific.
Anyway,
I'm going to edit out all of your lines in this.
just edit out. I'm not even gonna send you my track.
It's just going to be me for 25 minutes.
But I had a really similar thing. I outgrew the knock on wood thing completely, right? You don't do that anymore.
I think so. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I drove here by myself. Maybe I did it. I might do it, and it's like so subconscious. But I think now, like you said, I'm like, I don't need to do that. It's like, this my OCD. Sarah calls it my Joe CD.
Oh, okay. Because when I was maybe 11 for about a year, I also decided I needed to knock on wood anytime I had a bad thought. Like I would be like, in my head, I'd be like, you never had cancer. And then I'd have to knock on wood. Like I would like bully myself and compulsively say these things. And it was so bad that as I went to sleep, I had this nightstand that had a wood trim on it, and I would sleep with my hand on the trim so that I could just keep knocking it as I fell asleep.
Wow.
Because I would like put myself to sleep with these like thoughts, like your mom's gonna die, or like all these things.
Well, you put me to sleep with your act, but I'm kidding. But I had one where when I would go to sleep, and this I still do. If I had to, I would be closing my eyes to go to sleep, and then if I open one eye to look at something or to check the clock or whatever, I would have to open both eyes wide and then shut them together as one unit for some reason.
Or else they feel uneven, right?
Yeah, to like have one eye open and then just close the second eye. I had to open both and then close them together. It's weird, a lot of weird shit like that.
Yeah, like with my blink thing, if I do it, it has to feel even. like I blinked both eyes, or else one of them feels like colder than the other.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always like evening them out by like doing weird contortions with my face.
Yeah, it's
Is it Tourette's? Sometimes I think it's like a mild Tourette's.
I don't think so. I think it's retardation or
Okay.
no, sorry, too far. I think that it's I think it's OCD. I think that's all OCD. And then so is
Right.
like whenever I'm driving, I have the visual of like crazy wreckage of driving off the highway or getting clipped and then just like a crazy bloody crash and the ambulance coming and I have to snap myself out of it.
Yeah. Do you have problems seeing really gory things in films? Like, do the images like stick with you like too long? Or maybe that's everybody, but I feel like I get like really disturbed by certain things and then like keep seeing them over and over again.
No, I don't think so. I don't have that, but what I never have that. Like movies don't bother me at all. But I do have I do get bothered by needles going into an arm when they show it on the news all the time, and it makes me fucking sick. I hate that. But I do have, and this is another OCD thing, the visualization of violence sometimes of just people in the street. Like I picture what it would look like for someone to get shot in the skull, just have like that, like, and I think about it when I see people like in the park, which is weird.
Yeah, that's really weird. I think there's no.
But that is part of OCD to like visualize like horrific violence.
Right. Yeah. I guess I don't visualize that specific thing, but I definitely visualize like bad things or I'll worry that I'm going to do something bad like in my sleep.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
Oh, what if I like hurt someone in my sleep?
Weird. It's so weird that it's so weird that like it's the same disorder can cause all these different weird things. Like, 'cause some people that have OCD, they drive home and then they're afraid they hit someone that they didn't realize and they're just dead on the side of the highway. And some people are so sick with it that they'll drive back to see if that person is in the side of the road.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I don't do that, but that just makes sense to me.
Right,
like,
right.
That compulsion makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I'll be like, if I'm sharing a living space with someone, I'm like, what if I like murdered them in my sleep or something?
Yeah, it's fucking weird that those thoughts are in there. Or things of like laughing at a funeral or screaming like the worst thing possible in the supermarket. I have things like that. Like, what if I yell something horrible?
Yeah. I also will just laugh when someone tells me horrible news as like I get uncomfortable and it's like a reflex. Like someone will be like, hey, so-and-so, like they died. And then I just like, or if I'm telling someone died, I always laugh.
Yeah.
As I say it.
It's so funny. I mean, we gotta wrap up here soon, but to make it lighter than just horrific car accidents and stuff, you saying that reminded me of me and my friend Mike Cronin meet. We call him. I don't know if you've ever met him. He's an amazing comedian and great guy. But we were at a comedy club, and we were talking like in front of the owner / booker, and I was telling him about. I was like, "Hey, did you hear what happened to this person, this guy?" And he was like, no. And we had just been being silly and like just laughing and being goofs. And like, he's just really silly. And I'm very silly despite this podcast. Like we were just laughing. And I was like, oh, did you hear what happened to that guy? And he was like, no, what happened? And then I was like, he hung himself. And for some reason I just started laughing and then he started laughing. And then the owner got really bummed out. And he was like, you guys are fucked up. And I was like, no, it was somebody that I cared about and was sad about, obviously, like, and we both knew the person, but for whatever reason in that moment, like we had just been goofing around. And I think because we're so silly and irreverent, to say earnestly, he hung himself, like it just felt hilarious to us. Not that someone hanging themselves is funny, but.
Yeah, I also think for me, it'll come from weirdly like the same feeling that's excitement, because you're like, I know what I'm about to say is going to have like a huge effect on you.
Right.
It's the same thing with like telling someone I haven't seen The Godfather, to bring it back. Like you're like, oh, this is gonna affect them. Like, and I think just that like getting revved up like just somehow translates to laughter for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, someone said too, I forget where I read this, but like sadness and happiness are, first of all, there's two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the one. One only exists with the other. There would be no sadness if there was no happiness, and vice versa. But also, like, if you laugh hard enough, you start to cry, and if you cry hard enough, you start to laugh.
Right.
So both things are sort of intertwined. They're close, and they're both things are also can be faked, but they're sort of like visceral or whatever that word is. They're impulsive or uncontrollable, whatever that word. You're a lot smarter than I am. What's that word?
I think impulsive is the word. No.
Well, impulsive feels like
they're like a reflexive. Is that the word?
Maybe
I'm not
you're
that
not
smart.
You're just like music smart.
I've been fooling you.
What is that fucking word? Involuntary is the word I'm thinking of.
Oh, yes.
I think.
I was not going to think of that word, but I think that's the word.
I think that's the word I'm thinking of. But anyways, they're both similar at crying and laughing, sadness and happiness.
Right.
My roommate's yelling. It's going to be weird if any of this is picking up.
I can't hear your roommate.
No, you can't, but the microphone
on
might
your mic, right?
pick it
I'm like,
up.
well, I can't hear it, so it's probably fine.
It's just going to be weird if, like, while I'm saying this, you just hear, like, yeah, fucking motherfuckers, or something, whatever. That's not.
He's yelling at the movie?
I think he's on the phone now.
Oh, okay.
But anywho, we should wrap up. I feel like I've taken too much of your time. I saw you look the other way at the phone a couple of times.
No,
so
it's not my phone. It's the Zoom recorder. I'm new to using it, and I'm like, are the levels okay? Is it still recording?
No, I hear you. I worry about
on?
it too. Well, we have the backup, the actual Zoom computer as a backup,
Right.
So we have it.
And on my phone's recording mine also. We got a lot of
Oh.
backups here.
Perfect. I love that because I'm an anxious fella, obviously, as we've discussed. But it sounds like you're doing okay. We're getting through this.
Yeah. I think relatively I'm doing all right. I'm doing much better than I would have thought I would do. If you told me this was all going to happen like 5 months ago, I would be like, oh, that's not going to be good for me. And actually, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember. And I talk about this a lot on the podcast. It's like my therapist always says, like, this is one of my worst nightmares coming true. If everything's going to stop, you're not going to be able to do comedy. You're not going to be able to make any money. And there's going to be a deadly virus on the loose and you won't be able to see friends or go to the movies. And it's going to be really scary. That's to me like one of my worst nightmares, and it's come true, and I'm okay.
Right. I think you said that to me like early on in this. I was kind of like calling. I was like, "What's how you doing?" And you were just like, "Yeah, like we've been preparing for this, and we've been worrying about this our whole lives. And look, it's happening, and we're fine. Isn't that nice?"
Yeah, exactly. So, and then people with a lot of anxiety are the best, they say, in crisis situations. So, it's great. And then just let go and let God. It's out of our control, and we can just be the best people that we can be and try to be in the moment, and we'll be fine. Or we won't be fine, and that'll be okay too.
Right.
Worst case scenario, we die.
Yeah, and then like I think about that a lot. I'm like, yeah, dying isn't that bad.
It's not so bad. It's just like before you were born.
Right.
That wasn't so bad. I was around before you were born, and it was fantastic.
Arguably better, right?
That was like a great, 9 years of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sad and anxious, but
yeah.
anyways,
But-
tell her where can they find you?
Oh,
The people.
You can either, I guess I'm mostly active on Instagram. So at Isabel Hagen _. Isabel Hagen is annoyingly taken by some like 17-year-old Swedish girl.
Some douche.
I know. She doesn't even post. I want to message her. Anyway, and then my website, isabelhagen.com, has like a bunch of stuff. That's it.
Yeah, you don't tweet too much.
I'm not huge on Twitter. I tweet sometimes, but something with the algorithm, I don't think I'm active enough on it that like unless someone big retweets my tweet, it doesn't get any play.
Well, if you're asking me to retweet, I suppose I could try if I see anything worth retweeting.
Well, I haven't tweeted in a little bit. I'm also trying to not be on social media as much.
Yeah,
especially
same.
right now when things are like kind of paused anyway. I might as well take the time to. Here's one thing. I do think it's better for my creativity to like not be constantly posting little things and getting validation, and rather working towards one bigger thing.
Right.
Like really working on my jokes and like every day rather than the instant gratification, which I think actually interrupts like going deeper than I would have.
Yeah, no, social media is a horrific problem, and I hate it. And then sometimes I just can't not respond to people, and then I'm just like fighting with some stranger who's a fucking asshole, and it doesn't bring any satisfaction. And I think it's the worst thing to ever happen to our society.
Definitely agreed. Although I think now, since it caused all the issues, I think we can use it now to solve them, like getting information out and in these times of riots and things.
Yeah, there's things that are positive about it, and there's things that are brutal. But anyways, that's
we would have been better off without it. Anyway,
that's a whole other conversation for another day. But yeah, check out Isabel. She's wonderful, great comedian. Check out her Tonight Show appearance, which I assume is on YouTube.
Oh yeah, you just type in Isabel Hagen. I think it comes right up.
Yeah, go check that out and give a nice comment and a like. And yeah, thank you for listening. And if you want to support the show, we don't have ads or a Patreon. So if you want to Venmo, a lot of people did that. It was really nice at Joe List Comedy. And I was really grateful for that. So thanks.
That's nice.
Yeah, super nice. People are nice. Most people are good, I think.
I think so too. I think people want to be good.
Yeah, people want to help. And I try to remind myself that in the divide, most people believe they are doing the right thing. I think a lot of people are misguided, and a lot of people are getting bad information on both sides politically, are getting bad information, bad sources, and maybe I am too. I don't know. But I think most people think they're doing the right thing. So yeah, we went off the rails at the end here. I always do. I never know how to end a podcast, but...
You know, it's like getting off the phone. It's impossible.
Exactly. It's like getting off a woman.
Hey, what I started doing is I go, keep fighting the good fight, and then that's it.
Oh, that's nice. I thought you were going to tell me how you get off. Like you were like, I started using a vibrator, and I was like, oh, that's
yeah.
worked.
Well, that's
sense.
a whole other thing that's happened do a whole other podcast about getting off in quarantine, but you know. Not the time or place.
Yeah, certainly not. But all right, I'm going to hit stop on the recorder, but then we'll wrap up our conversation not recorded.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Isabel.
Thanks.
Mindful Metal Jacket is hosted by comedian Joe List. Produced by Joe List. Edited by Matt Kleinschmidt. Executive producers Robert Kelly and Matt Kleinschmidt for the Laugh Button Podcasts.